Good morning, dear children. Welcome to this session of biology. In this session, we will be studying about nitrogen cycle. In chapter number 2, microorganisms, friend and foe. In earlier sessions, we have already studied the uses of microorganisms, the harmful microorganisms, and the importance of food preservation. Now today, we will be studying about nitrogen cycle. Now nitrogen, although it is present almost 78% in the atmosphere, but it cannot be absorbed by the plants in its elemental form. In its elemental form, it is present in the atmosphere. We all need nitrogen because all the living organisms are composed of nitrogen. So plants, animals and human beings, they are all composed of nitrogen. So, but in plants, the nitrogen that is there in the atmosphere, they cannot be absorbed directly by the roots of the plant. This elemental nitrogen needs to be converted into compounds of nitrogen. The compounds of nitrogen will be absorbed by the plants, and from the plants it will go to animals. So this nitrogen first needs to be changed into compounds of nitrogen. Now how it can be changed? The compounds of nitrogen, this nitrogen, elemental nitrogen, can be changed into compounds of nitrogen by three ways. By blue-green algae and bacteria in the soil. There are certain bacteria in the soil which helps to convert the elemental nitrogen into the compounds of nitrogen. Now this bacteria which helps in converting the elemental nitrogen is called as, for example, rhizobium. Rhizobium is an example of bacteria that helps in nitrogen fixation. Now come to lightning. At the time of thunder and lightning also, due to the amount of extreme energy, heat energy that is released at the time of lightning, some of this energy is able to break down the elemental nitrogen into compounds of nitrogen. So that is how during the time of lightning, the atmospheric nitrogen gets fixed into the soil in the form of compounds of nitrogen. Now fertilizers. Some fertilizers which contains good amount of nitrogen helps in the replenishment of nitrogen in the soil in the form of compounds of nitrogen. Now this compound of nitrogen is absorbed by the plant roots. Now this is absorbed by the roots of the plant. Now the nitrogen have come into the roots of the plant. Now from the plants it is gone into animals. The animals take the nitrogen which is present in the plants. Animals eat the plants and the nitrogen comes into their body. Now when the plants and animals on their death and decay, the nitrogenous waste is produced from the excretion and death. And this is also done by some bacteria and fungus. Those are called as decomposing microorganisms. These decomposing microorganisms, the decomposers, helps the decomposition of the body of plants and animals into the compounds of nitrogen. So again, the plants, it is taken up by the plants, it comes into the animal, and upon their death and decay, again this is coming back into the soil in the form of compounds of nitrogen. Now some of the compounds of nitrogen gets converted back into the atmospheric nitrogen, elemental nitrogen. Now it is done through some bacteria. They converts the compound of nitrogen into gaseous nitrogen, and the name of that bacteria is Pseudomonas. It is a denitrifying bacteria. Denitrifying means it is converting back the compounds of nitrogen into elemental nitrogen. So that is a denitrifying bacteria, and it is, the example is Pseudomonas. So like this, the whole cycle of nitrogen completes on the earth. 78% present on the earth. Out of this, all are elemental. Some of the elemental nitrogen gets converted into compounds of nitrogen, which is taken up by the plants, and then it comes into the animals when they are eaten, when they eat the plants, and then on their death and decay, again the compounds of nitrogen is formed. And some of the compounds of nitrogen directly turns back into the elemental nitrogen through some bacteria which converts the compounds of nitrogen into elemental nitrogen. So that is how the nitrogen cycle keeps happening on the earth. So I hope you all have understood the whole nitrogen cycle. That's all for today.
Let's study nitrogen cycle. The atmospheric nitrogen cannot be used directly by plants and animals. The nitrogen needs to get converted to nitrogenous compounds. This is called as nitrogen fixation. So, the atmospheric nitrogen first will have to be absorbed, before being absorbed by the plants, will have to be converted into compounds of nitrogen. There are certain leguminous plants which have root nodules in them, and there lives a bacteria called as rhizobium bacteria. Now this bacteria helps in converting the atmospheric nitrogen into compounds of nitrogen. They help in converting the nitrogen into ammonia. Atmospheric nitrogen is converted into ammonia by rhizobium bacteria. Now this ammonia will be converted into nitrates and nitrites by nitrifying bacteria. These nitrifying bacteria will convert ammonia to nitrites and nitrates. Nitrogen fixation can also occur by lightning. During the time of lightning, the nitrogen gets converted into nitrogenous compounds, gets broken down into nitrogenous compounds like nitrates. And these nitrates will be absorbed by the roots of the plants from the soil. And these nitrates will help form the plant protein. Plants use these nitrates to make proteins. The plants are then eaten by the animals, and they will also get the protein. So that is how the nitrogen is coming into the animals from the plants. Now, dead plants and animal excreta contain nitrogenous wastes. These nitrogenous wastes are decomposed and converted into ammonia by the decomposing bacteria and fungus. Now this ammonia gets converted again to nitrates, and the nitrates will be absorbed by the roots of the plant. Some nitrates are again used by the plants. Now there are certain denitrifying bacteria also. They will convert some nitrates back into atmospheric nitrogen. Nitrogen gas goes back to atmosphere. Therefore, the percentage of nitrogen remains constant in the air. So that is how the whole cycle gets completed. The atmospheric nitrogen, with the help of rhizobium bacteria, gets converted into ammonia, and ammonia gets converted into nitrates with the help of nitrifying bacteria. Lightning also fixes the atmospheric nitrogen, and these are absorbed by the plant to make proteins, and the plants are eaten by animals to get the animal protein. Now, animal waste and plant waste gets converted into ammonia by decomposing bacteria and fungus. And this ammonia or the nitrates gets converted back into the atmospheric nitrogen by denitrifying bacteria. This cycle is known as nitrogen cycle.